Thank you so much for that welcome, and I'm not sure how I can entertain you after that last performance, but I'll try my best. So it's an immense pleasure being in the presence of such young, energetic minds and also seasoned professionals. It gives me immense pleasure to be among you and addressing all of you. And then today, I would like to go back in time. And I would like to go back to the past. So it was November 9, 2017. I was a normal university student like most of you, and I did not know what I was doing with my life, naturally. So I got up, I was having my midterm examinations. I went to the university, but before I went, I had breakfast at my friend's house because I still can't cook anything. So after that, I went to my university, and before the paper, something happened that would change my life forever. I got a call from someone who has never called me before that day or after that day, which was the first sign of suspicion. And then he said to me that, my father was a serving police officer in Balochistan. He says, your father has been attacked, and you need to contact him. And I was like, okay. So what followed was utter chaos, right? I tried contacting him, and in the aftermath, I found out that, he had lost his life in a suicide attack along with 2 other comrades. So they had been martyred, which was utterly devastating. As you can imagine, my life was changed forever. It was a very traumatic experience. And then when I went through all of these stages, I sat there and thought to myself, well, can I let this become my legacy or my identity? Because I started hearing what people started calling me. Oh, he's the victim. Oh, he'll never be the same, the poor boy. Right, and I thought to myself, I need to do something. I need to, get out of this setback in order to achieve my goals. So what I did was I underwent a stage. It was a very long process to redefine my identity. And throughout this process, the Osama that stands in front of you, he never existed 5 or 6 years ago. So I underwent a process, and then this leads me to ask all of you a question. How often have you felt that your identity is not consistent with the person you are? It is not aligned with the goals that you want to achieve in life? How often have you felt constrained by society, self-imposed restrictions? So the journey to re-identify ourselves is a journey that we undertake at some point in our lives, and let us talk about it today. First of all, unfortunately, the slides that I made, they were supposed to be really immersive, but they didn't work, so now you'll have to just look at me and them. So this is how we're going to look at this, redefining our identity in 7 simple steps, right? And the first thing is that, what is our identity, right? It's a very vague term. It's a combination of things, your values, your beliefs, your culture, your norms, what the society teaches you. It is multidimensional, ever-changing. But over time, your identity can become target of confusion. It can become stagnant. So Erik Erikson, who's a sociologist, has developed a theory. And his theory of social-sociological development, he says that there are 2 stages in life in which a person, he feels that he has an identity crisis. One, in adolescence, when we're growing up, we look to establish relationships with our friends and family in order to define our identities. And then when we grow up in adulthood, we are actually conflicted whether we want to contribute to society or be a family person. And naturally, the choices we make actually lead us to the identity conundrum. So we face ourselves in a situation where we feel our identities are not consistent with the goals we want. They are no longer relevant to our aspirations, but we do not do anything about it. We're not actively trying to change it. So we find ourselves in an identity conundrum. So the first step to solving any problem is admitting that there's a problem in the first place. So the first step in redefining our identity is admitting that you are living in an identity conundrum, that you have, for some reason or the other, developed a new identity which is not consistent with you, right? So once we've done with this step, the next step, the power of self-reflection. So we've admitted now that our identity is not consistent with what we want to be, but that begs another question. Then what is our identity? If, your goal in life is to become an astronaut and your current identity is that of a football player, then are you really on the right path? See, admitting that there's an identity conundrum is the first part of the process, but it's also important to understand that you have developed a different identity. For example, you cannot solve a problem by accepting that you have to change. You also have to accept that you have to let things go. So, self-reflection is very important, and I'll give you an example. Philip Zimbardo, who was a criminologist, he conducted experiments which was known as the Stanford Prison Experiments, in which he gave to prisoners. Some of them were guards, some of them were prisoners, and their identities would change, according to the roles that they were given. And this, whole experiment concluded that, circumstances affect your identity. If you're born in a rich household, in a poor household, good education, bad education, it all affects your identity. Now, moving forward, why self-reflection is important? Because if you want to achieve a certain goal in life, like I said, you want to be a math teacher, an astronaut, then you have to know what steps are required to be an astronaut. You have to study people who actually became astronauts, what they were doing, what they were studying, and how their lifestyles were. It's because, making success is one way to get to, a successful position, and after, you've become successful, you can reinvent your own ways. So, thank you. Right, so up to this point, we've realized that we're living in an identity conundrum, and the second step is we have self-reflected and we've thought, okay, no, this is not who I want to be. I don't want to be a doctor. I don't want to be a doctor or a lawyer because my parents want that. I want to be someone else. And that is the power of self-reflection. So we've realized what we are and what we want to become, right? The third step, breaking free from labels. So this is a small step along the way, but very important. So, labels, they're a normal part in our society. They often serve to bring us down. What do labels do? I was once known as, the skinny kid, and then I was known as the kid, and then I went to the gym and fixed that, and now I'm known as the narcissist guy. So this leads me to believe that you can never truly break free of labels. But I'll tell you something, once you've achieved a position where you consider yourself successful, the labels won't bother you much. But why is it important to break free of these labels? It's because they're limiting you. Oh, the creative guy, the fat guy, the nerd, right? These limit your abilities. And why I talk about labels is because I'm going to tell you another study. Howard Becker, he was also a criminologist. In 1963, he conducted various experiments in the United States. And what he found out was that people of color, they were often labeled as thieves or robbers. And what that did to them was they actually started believing that they were thieves and robbers, and they started adapting their persona. It became a self-fulfilling prophecy. So people actually go on to accept these labels. They actually go on to identify themselves as thieves or a fat guy or a It's important to be strong in your mind that these labels, they can never define you and they can never limit you. Thank you. So once that you guys have now decided that you are in an identity conundrum, you've decided that you want to be someone else, you also have to break free of these labels. And considering you've done that as well, the next, embracing change, the most important step. It's important to acknowledge that human beings, they're resistant to change, naturally. If someone comes and tells you today that, oh no, we're changing our house, you're going to have second thoughts. because we have our comfort zones, you know. We have places where we're comfortable, we don't want to move. But embracing change is a part of growth. Embracing change is a part of redefining your identity. The most successful people in life have anticipated change rather than making change. So this tells you what you need to know. You need to be willing to let go of certain notions that hold you back. You need to be willing to change your lifestyle, your habits, your personalities in order to become a new identity. An example, a fun one for you, is that David Beckham, I'm sure a lot of the boys and girls here know him because he's a footballer, but he's also very famous because of his fashion lifestyle. David Beckham was one of the most famous rising young stars of his time, but he also faced an identity crisis when he was leaving Manchester for Real Madrid. What had developed an image for being a rich, spoiled boy who was more interested in photo shoots and, you know, brand deals than playing football, hurting his image because his own fans started booing him in games. So what did Beckham do? Well, he made change with time. He actually left all of the brands. He cut them down. He cut down the photo shoots, cut down the paparazzi, and then he started focusing on football, but two other things. He started becoming a family man and a philanthropist, which actually redefined his image to someone who was a rich, spoiled boy, to a family guy, a caring guy. And that made him even more popular than he was before. And unlike most footballers, he is relevant today. And in case some of you have problem accepting change, there is a really simple method Kurt Lewin has introduced. It's called the change model. And the names are also very simple. So the first step is unfreezing. And it simply means that letting go of all of these habits, all of these notions that hold you back. And then the second step is changing, the actual process of changing, adapting, bringing in new habits, bringing in new personality goals and changes. And the third step is refreezing, making sure that these new habits actually stay. Right, so up to this point, you know, you've realized you needed to change, and then you've realized what you needed to become, and you've implemented the change, right? What does that change need to be? Now, when we want to redefine our identity, it has to be authentic. Authenticity is your true north, right? So why I say this is because we found ourselves in the problem in the first place. We have to redefine our identity. We want to make sure that it is correct this time. Every one of us in this room comes from different backgrounds, different cultures, different language, you know, different norms. And all of it combines to, you know, align with your personality and goals, right? You have to make sure that it is represented equally in your personality, your identity. You don't want to become someone that is actually, you know, faking it, actually doing it for someone else, adopting a persona that will make a problem for you in the future. So sit down, have a talk with yourself, write down your interests, your goals, what your aspirations are, what your culture expects from you, what your family and friends expect from you, and most importantly, what you expect from you. Write them down and then make sure that once you've decided to change your personality, your new identity should have these necessities. Right? So now that you have made the change, right? Now you're a transformed person. You have a new identity which is more aligned with, you know, your goals. Now you're on the way of becoming an astronaut rather than a doctor, right? And then there's one mistake all of us make. What is that one mistake? That one mistake is that we're not mindful of our surroundings, right? The transformative power of mindfulness, we often underestimate it. So what is mindfulness? A lot of scientific studies have shown that being mindful is really being aware of your emotional well-being and your attributes. You know, people often hesitate to sit down with themselves and think that, hey, are my interests changing? Like I said, your identity, your goals are fluid. They change with time. Maybe today I'm a civil servant. It's not necessary that 10 years down the line I be the same thing. Maybe I want to change. The world changes in a fast way, right? You've seen big tech companies like Apple. When they actually dropped the headphone jack, there was a lot of outcry, but it became the norm. So they were mindful of the changes, that were needed to be made, which is why it's important that you don't find yourself in the same position as the first step. If you're not mindful of, the changes that are occurring in you, you'll find yourself in an identity crisis again. So sit down, again, like you did before, have a talk with yourself. Are your goals and interests changing? And in case they are, this is a small step, but it's going to help you avoid all of the steps before. In case there are changes occurring in you right now, you want to do something else. Maybe you want to move out of the country, maybe you want a different profession, and then you can start implementing these small steps, incremental changes that will help you avoid all of those big steps before, right? Very important. The last step. So now that you've become a new person, you've transformed, you feel really great about yourself, we are over to the ripple effect, right? So what is the ripple effect? The ripple effect states that anything that you do that derives a positive outcome in your life will help people bring a positive outcome in their life. It's like, a water droplet. It spreads across. So I stand here today because maybe I was inspired by someone else, and then maybe I inspire a few of you, and then you go on to inspire someone else. It's a ripple effect. When you adapt an identity that is authentic, true to yourself, it helps you achieve your goals. People are going to want to imitate you, because it's the easiest thing to do is to imitate, other people, follow their lead, follow their motivation, because driving your own authentic journey is a difficult task to do. But you're going to motivate other people to do that. You're going to help bring change. You're going to help them realize that, society or all these expectations that weigh us down, they can't hold us down forever. Once you've created a new identity, it's going to help other people create theirs as well. And one last theory that I would like to share is Albert Bandura. He's also a sociologist. He's developed a theory which is known as the social learning theory, in which he says that people can learn from other people. People can adapt habits, They can actually imitate personalities like children do of their father and mothers. Similarly, people can actually learn from one another. So once you've, actually become a very successful person who is very happy with their life, then you're going to motivate others to do the same. And then to conclude all of this, to wrap this up, we've realized from the start that we are facing an identity conundrum. And the main reason why we want to address it is because we want to achieve our goals. You cannot achieve your goals if your identity, your personality is not aligned with the person you want to become. And having these attributes will help you become this successful person. Right? And once you go on from this identity conundrum to this transformation stage, you're going to actually make this change. The journey to redefine your identity is a dance between self-reflection and transformation. And always remember that it's an ongoing process. It's a dynamic process, ever-changing. If I could go back in time 6 years ago, I would thank that boy who was broken down, and he decided to make this change. He started this. And from that beaten, broken down boy, I am now, someone who can actually be happy with their lives. And maybe this is the that you guys sit down, have a talk with yourselves, and start this journey. And as we embark on this journey together, let me remind you that we can always redefine our identities one thought at a time. Thank you.